Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the stream. It's good to see you all again, even though I can't see you, but I can see the number of people that are here, supposedly, which is 4. And EGR NHL, that sounds familiar. I think you were on the last one. It says, how long will the stream be live today? Approximately 2 hours. That's my intention anyway, depending on how many questions we get. But we are talking about salary today. This is going to be a live stream all about salary. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this. And there's the doorbell. Well, I'm indisposed. This is something that a lot of people have been asking a lot of questions on. We're going to be covering, what are your salary expectations? This is a question that you could be asked in a job interview. It's also a question that you could be asked in a job application. So we're going to be covering those. We're going to be talking about salary negotiation. We're going to be touching on the other question in a job interview where they ask you a pointed question. They say, what is your current salary? All right. We're going to be covering that too. There's a whole bunch of stuff to this. And just so you know, with 2 hours, we're still scratching the surface. There's a lot of concepts here. I've taught entire courses on compensation. So there's a lot to this. Remo's here. Remo says hello, and he's got the little applause thing. You know, I don't have one of those, I forget what you call it, those sound pads where you press a key and it gives sound effects. I don't have one of those yet, but I might get that in the future for just a touch of class on my live streams. So yeah, and Patrick from Germany. Hello, Germany. Hello from Canada. It's good to see you. It's awesome. We got people all around the world. 22 people are here for this, so awesome. We're going to talk about salary and compensation, and I'll spare you all the details, but suffice it to say that I have quite an interest in monetary theory, the concept of wealth and money and what it actually is. For example, questions like, what's your value, right? These questions don't really have an answer, and if you go to an accountant or an economist or a finance type person, you will get different answers and it'll be very vague, right? And this is directly relevant to us now because you're essentially negotiating with somebody how much you're going to get paid. And it's an adversarial type situation because they want to pay you as little as possible and you want to get paid as much as possible, right? So we're going to talk about how this stuff works. Even something like finding out what you're worth, right? Or questions like, you know, how much pay for me is fair? You know, questions like this, very hard to answer. And so we're going to cover all of this. So it's great to see some people here. Abhi Kumar is here, and Florin is here. Hello from Romania. Hello from India, right? Romania. Which one is the capital city of Romania? Bucharest, I think, right? Budapest is Hungary, if I'm not mistaken. It's Bucharest is Romania. Anyway, I'm sure I'm probably wrong. I usually am. Okay, so I'm going to cut right to the chase. That's why a lot of people are here. What are your salary expectations? Short answer. I'm not going to string this along forever. I'll just give you the answer right now, and then we'll talk about it. If they ask you this question in a job interview, number one, you want to delay. You don't want to have to answer this question. The reason why they're asking you is because they're trying to eliminate you based on how much money you want. Okay, if they're talking to 20 people, usually it's less than that, but let's say they're talking to 20 people, and presumably all of them are technically qualified to do the job because you've seen their resumes, right? So they only invite the people that they feel are technically qualified. You get them to the interview and you could ask one question. You could say, what are your salary expectations? And somebody will say, well, I want $1 million. And you can just eliminate them right there, right? So you're whittling down from 20, you're going down eventually to 1, right? So as a first sort of filter, you could just ask people their salary expectations. If they want too much money, you eliminate them and you proceed. This is how a lot of companies do it. So that's the motivation behind asking this question, especially when it's very early in the hiring process. Okay, so you don't want to answer. So a great response to give is, well, I would need more details before I can answer that. Okay, so that's a great first response. Now, more often than not, they're not going to buy that. They're going to say, well, we still would like you to give us a number, right? So you move on to part two. Number one is I need more details. Part two is you throw the question back at them. You could say something like, well, obviously this is an approved job position, right? So the salary range must have been approved also. So can I ask what it is? Okay, so you turn the question around, you throw it back to them and ask them, well, what is the range for this? Okay. And then whatever they say, if they do give you a number or they do give you a range, you say, well, that's fine with me. If they say the range is anywhere between, 20 and 30 or whatever they give you, you just say, well, that works for me. Okay, so that allows you to pass the question. They haven't eliminated you because you wanted too much money. What you wanted was within their salary range. Okay, so if that's where it ends, perfect. However, a lot of times they won't end it there. They'll keep pushing you. They'll say, well, we really need you to give a number. So then you move on to part three. And part three is you give a range, okay? Really low to really high. Okay, now these two numbers you're giving, the minimum and the maximum, okay, they're still within the realms of possibility, but they're a stretch, okay? So you could say, well, I don't know, whatever you're up for. Anything between 50 and 100, somewhere in there would be fine depending on details. Okay, now the reason you're doing this is because, first of all, you're not demanding a high number, which would a lot of times eliminate you. You are giving a low number, okay, but you're not committing to it. You're allowing for the possibility of demanding more money later on. Okay, so you pass this test. You don't eliminate yourself because you wanted too much money, but you still allow yourself to be able to negotiate a higher amount later. Okay, so that's the sort of 3-step answer. Okay, what are your salary expectations? Number one, well, I would need more details before I can answer that. By the way, if they ask you what details you need, it's like you would need to know everything about the job. Just going on a job description is not good enough, okay? That gives you some information, but it really leaves a lot of important things out, okay? So a good answer to that, if they call you on that, is just to say, well, just more of a feel for the culture. If you have to say it in a phrase, that's usually a good thing to say. Okay, so part one is I can't answer. I would need more details. We're very early in this process. I hardly know anything about it. Step two is this is an approved position, so there must be an approved range. Can I ask what it is? That's the second step. And then only if they're not satisfied with either of those and they keep pushing you, you move on to step three, which is to give a wide range, very low to very high. Both numbers are still reasonable, possible, doable, but they're a stretch, okay? Really absolute lowest, absolute highest within reason. Okay, so that's the thing to follow if they ask you this question in a job interview. Okay, but what's very important to note here is that if you're not in an actual interview, if this is on like a form or a web form, like a website, you can't use this. It's a little bit different. Usually they give you a field. You have to enter one number into the field or else you can't move on. So it's a bit of a different situation. Okay, so we're gonna talk about next. Bucharest. Yeah, I think I got that right. Awesome. Exactly. You were right. Hello from, Myanmar. Right on. That's May. Mohammed from Jordan, Amman, if I say that right, Amman, I think. Yesterday, I've been asked this question. I replied that you are a fair company and I will be happy with the midpoint of the salary scheme for this position. Okay, well, that's not the worst answer in the world. You're not eliminating yourself by asking for too much. They could conceivably push you further. I don't know if that's what they did. Sometimes they'll say, like, well, what is the midpoint? Like, what salary, what number did you have in mind? So if they left it there, great. I'm sure you passed with that answer, but I wouldn't recommend that because they could still keep pushing you. But it's fine. How should I answer when they invite interview out of their country? Oh, well, that's so general. I mean, look, if it's out of your country, that in itself isn't a huge deal as long as they're speaking your language, right? And if it's a huge jump, as long as you're aware of some basic cultural differences, if that even enters into it, you should be fine. Hello from Spain, Madrid, right? Excellent YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Alberto. That's very kind of you to say. Oman, yes. Yeah, Oman is the country, right? Hi from Russia. Thank you for your valuable information. Right, Moscow. In Cyrillic script, no doubt. So that's awesome. Okay, so if you're being asked this question on some kind of website or web form or application where you have to enter into a field, okay, it's a little bit different. You can't give a range, you can't avoid the question, and you can't ask them a counter question in return. You have to give a number. So what do we do then? Here's my recommendation for that. Okay. Listen, when they give you a job description, okay, usually in a job posting, they'll tell you a little bit about the job. Okay. And you've got some information, but you certainly don't have all the information you would want, right? Some of the more critical questions like, what are my hours going to be? Is my boss going to be really friendly or going to be a total jerk? Are my coworkers going to be a bunch of backstabbing idiots? Or are we going to be the best of friends? Is shift work involved? Is travel involved? What's my vacation like? Blah, 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 blah. There's a million questions you could ask that are highly relevant that are not disclosed in the job description. Okay, so you've got a lot of missing pieces. So they're asking you, how much money do you need? And they're not even really giving you that clear of a picture of what they're offering. Okay, that's the situation. Can you hear that? My chair is really creaky. So here's what I recommend. For all those missing pieces, things you don't know, try to imagine that they're all perfect. Okay, they are like elements of your dream job. Okay, so imagine that your boss is like the best boss you'll have ever had in your life. Your coworkers are all wonderful people that, you'd work there just to be with them. The work is exciting. The hours are perfectly tailored to your lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera. Just imagine all the missing pieces are perfect. And then think of the minimum salary you would ever accept to do the job. Okay, so you're imagining an idealized version of this job. And then you're going to give a number that's like the minimum you would ever accept to take that dream job, essentially. Okay? That's how you would answer that, in my opinion, because the only reason they're asking you this question, this is like the very earliest stage. This is in the job application itself. If they're asking you, what are your salary expectations, and it's on the application, that's the earliest possible stage. The only reason they're asking this question is to filter you out and have you eliminate yourself by asking for too much money. Okay? So because of that, that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're imagining this is like our dream job. Everything we don't know about it is perfect. and then we're thinking of a number, and that's the number we're going to give them. Okay? That way, you accomplish the strategy here, which is staying in the game long enough for them to see your true value. Because once they see your true value, they're going to be okay with paying you more. At the very beginning, they're not seeing your true value. You're just a number. You're just a resume in a pile, with possibly 100 others, right? They're not going to look closely at you at all, okay? In fact, they might look at, do you have this education or this experience, and how much money are you wanting? And they might eliminate you just on those two, okay? So that's how you handle that situation. It's a little bit different from if you're asked this question in a job interview. Okay, we have Mohammed. I've been asked this question. I replied that fair and I'll be happy with him. Okay, I already read that. Last time I gave a range and it wasn't a wide one. They gave me the highest amount that I asked for. Okay, great. What should I answer if I was asked why I want so much salary, if they asked about my expected salary? We're going to get into that, what your value is and all this kind of stuff. The short answer, if you need something now, is, first of all, you should know your own value. What that means is you should know the market price for your skills, okay? It's very easy to find that out. There's websites like Glassdoor or Payscale, right? Glassdoor.com or Payscale.com. They can give you a rough idea of what the range is for someone with your skills and education and experience in your region. Okay, it's not pinpoint accurate, but it can give you a sort of ballpark idea. So if you walk in there knowing that, also, obviously, if you have a work history and you've been doing similar type jobs to this one you're up for, then you will know, you'll have an idea of like what a reasonable amount of money is for this role, right? Okay. Now, the other part of that question that I can't really answer in like a minute, but is super important, is they're asking you to give a sales pitch. You're having to sell yourself. Why are you worth this much money? Now, if you know what you can do for these people, right, this is where your sales pitch will come in. It's like, well, depending on your job, I don't know what you do. You either generate this large amount for the company every year, and you're asking for a fraction of that, or you save a huge amount of money. You can't see my arms, but they're like up in the air. I save this huge amount of money. If it wasn't for me, you guys would, be paying X amount of money every year in compensation for industrial accidents, or you'd be paying this much for, the wastage or inefficiency or penalties or, whatever it is, right? So, this is how much I'm saving you. I'm saving you all this money. I'm asking for this, right? It's a really good deal. Okay. In the last job where I worked, I was paid in this, standard pay range, and just the money I saved because of the projects I did or because of the nature of my job, that's like, $2 million a year just in what we recovered. So yeah, this is what I can do for you. This is why I'm worth it. And I have that experience, so I can get rolling immediately. There's no learning curve. Et cetera, et cetera. That's where you would insert your sales pitch, okay? But we're going to get into some of these concepts in a bit, like your value and where it comes from. By the way, I want to thank all the members of my YouTube channel that are here. If you're not a member yet, and this is something you might be interested in, you get an extra video from me a week. And you get priority in me answering your questions. So if that's of any use to you, you can join by clicking the join button, at least on the desktop. Still don't know if it works on mobile. If someone let me know if you can actually join as a member from your phone, let me know if YouTube has actually added that yet. I haven't checked that. What do we got here? Why should I answer? Okay, Ronesh says, thank you for the awesome videos. From South Africa. Awesome. That's still Pretoria as far as I know. Right? Pretoria? No problem, Ronesh. Patrick says, what do I do if the employer talks down the tasks of the position? In the sense of there is no complicated tasks and therefore we do not pay a high salary. Well, look, it doesn't matter what they say. It really doesn't, okay? Let's talk about this now. It's funny. When it comes to money, we all as people kind of have the same behavior, okay? Now, organizations like companies or the government or the military or whatever, wherever you would work, okay, they behave the same as us as individuals, okay? A lot of people don't think that they do or something, but they do. So listen, when you go to the store or something, I've already done that example. Let's do something else. Like, I don't know if you guys ever watch shows where people, like they're home improvement type shows. People are going to buy a house or something. If maybe you have to get to middle age to really watch those type of shows or something. People go house hunting and they want to buy a house. And which house do they buy? Like, they look at a bunch of them. Which one do they always buy? They always buy the most expensive one, right? Every single time. Their budget is from here to here, but they always buy the one that's like right here, Listen, the reason why you see things like that is because if you don't know any of the options, the first thing you look at is their price. Okay, that's the first criteria you use to decide if it's still in the running or you're going to eliminate it as an option, right? Okay, and if you don't know much about something, it's hard to justify a high price, okay? But let's say you keep revisiting that option, you keep learning all about it. If it's a house, you go visit the house, you go walk through it, you start imagining, what you would do if that house was yours and where you would put all your stuff and, stuff like this. And then you start to fall in love with it. You start to develop an emotional attachment to it now that you know all about it, right? And you know all the features, and the more information you find out about it, the more you would be receptive to paying a high price for it because you're seeing its value, right? That's exactly how companies behave when they're looking at candidates. Okay? In the very early stages of the application, you're a name on a resume and you're a number, like how much you need. Okay? They only care about the number because they don't know who you are, they don't know what you can bring to the job, and they have no attachment to you whatsoever. Okay? So it's very easy to eliminate somebody at that stage because of, the money that they want. Right? But fast forward down the process. Instead of talking to 20 people, maybe now in the second round, they're talking to 7. Okay? And they're going a bit deeper and they're getting to know these people. They're seeing what value they can bring. The hiring manager is present and they're seeing the different individuals that, they're going to have to work with one of these people, whoever they hire. So they're starting to like a couple of individuals and say like, oh, I'd rather work with them. That person would be fun to work with, right? And starting to see their value. And then you get to maybe the last round where there's like 3 finalists and they have to make a choice from 3 people who are they going to choose. And then they go even deeper. They spend more time with them and they ask them all about their past and, and they're really seeing the value of some of these people. What could you bring if we hired you? And these people start talking. So at that point, money is now less important, okay? They're now thinking of like, okay, which candidate would really be the best? And at that point, as long as it's within their range, their budget, it doesn't matter really because they want who they want. They've formed an attachment. In some cases, a personal, emotional attachment by meeting these people. You have a personal reaction. I don't think I really click with that person, but that person I really click with. I'd like to have them. That would be interesting. Okay, so that's exactly how companies behave, right? They do have a budget, okay, in some way, shape, or form, but outside of that, money becomes less important. So as you go further down the process, you have more ability to ask for more money and have them give it to you. Okay. And that culminates in the job offer. Let's say you're fortunate enough to be selected. They give you the job offer. It's in writing. Here's how it's all going to work. Here's what you have to do. Here's your hours. Here's your vacation. Here's your benefits. Here's, like your whole compensation package. Right. And, at this point, they've decided they want you and they're now attached to you. If the hiring manager is present, then, they're like attached to you. In their mind, they've picked you and it's just a matter of time before you start working, right? Okay. Well, at that point, when you receive the job offer and you call them back, what a good thing to do if you want to push for more money, okay, is to say, look, okay, you want this, that's fine. You want this, that's fine. These are the hours, that's fine. You want me to start on this date? That's fine too. Yeah, I'll give you that. The start date, that's going to be a bit of a stretch, but you know what? I'll make it work. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it, So I'm giving you all these things, right? I've given you a bunch of things, but vacation's fine, blah, blah, blah. But this here, sorry, I'm going to need it bumped up to this much. Okay, I need that. Okay, you got to give me that. If that's okay, then we got a deal and I'll start, bam, whenever you want. Okay, so at that point, you're presenting them with basically a choice. They could say yes and everything works fine, or they could say no and now they have to give up their lead candidate that they were counting on and go to one of the people they'd already decided was not as good, like the runner-up. Okay? So it's pain. There's pain involved for them if they don't accept your requirement. Okay? So you can do this at the end of the process, but not at the beginning. At the beginning, you try and ask for more. They just say, okay, I'm sorry, we're going with somebody else. Okay, so we got a member, and then the message is retracted. So I'm not sure what was happening there, but if someone did join, congratulations. If someone didn't, oh well, maybe next time. Let's see. Where was the last one I did here? Oh, Alberto says hi again. Alberto says hi again. For instance, my current salary is $31K. I want to ask for $40K. What should be the salary range I should suggest? 25 to 45. Well, like I said, the two numbers, the minimum and the maximum, are going to be a stretch, very low to very high, but they're going to still be within the realm of possibility for that job. You're not going to give numbers that are like just completely unreasonable. You can't say I would work for anything between 1 and 300. Like, it has to be reasonable. So I can't give you exact numbers for whatever job it is, but that's the criteria. Okay. Now the other thing is that depending on circumstances, it's not always an assumption you're going to make more. Okay. Like that's the other thing. You can't just assume because I'm getting a new job, I'm going to make more. That's not a ridiculous assumption, but it doesn't always play out depending on the circumstances. See, some organizations, if we're talking about big organizations, some of them will pay you market price. They'll pay you the average amount for someone with your skills. And they pay all their employees the average amount. Okay, market price. Other organizations will intentionally pay above market price. They will pay people better than market price. And there's a variety of reasons for that. They could be very good companies, or they could be companies that really demand a lot from their employees and no one would work for them, otherwise. They have to pay people more because maybe it's so unpleasant working there. And some companies pay below market price. They pay people less than average. Once again, that could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe it actually is what somebody was saying and the job isn't that demanding. They don't have very high standards. Or it could be just, we really don't care. We want to get people for cheap and save money. Usually that doesn't work in the long run, but some companies try that. Usually those are not the greatest companies to work for, if they do that. But we're only talking about big companies here, okay? Watching you, a Ukrainian in Barcelona. It's like an Englishman in New York, right? I'm an alien. I'm a legal alien. Yeah. Well, it's nice to have you, Tatiana. Javier says, hello, Bill. Thanks for your videos. I had a job interview for a position inside my company. So an internal position. They never brought up the salary question. Then they proposed me no salary increase. I refused. Okay. You can do that. I mean, once again, depends on details. In some situations, you take that at face value and you say, yeah, if you want me to take on more responsibility and do more, have more duties, I need more money. It's just that simple. Or it could be something where the compensation is in something other than money. Like, for example, let's say you get very good experience. Let's say you, there's some kind of other benefit, like you get to work with the big boss. And because you're that close to the big boss, it could result in some very good things happening for your career at that company. Or you get certain types of very valuable experience or recommendations or networking needs, things like that. It might be just an easier job. Like instead of working outside in the cold in the winter or outside in the heat in the summer, doing manual work, now you get to sit at the desk in an air-conditioned office. So you might not get a pay boost, but there are some either intangibles or there's some other benefits to that role. So it could go either way, depending on what they were offering. Tomorrow is the interview. Had a same question today. What is my salary expectation? What I say less than they actually gonna pay? Yeah. Well, I was answering at the beginning. I don't know if you heard that. Hopefully that makes sense. But we will get into a lot of concepts, and hopefully that should answer your question. Arigato. I know Arigato says, great channel. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you, Arigato. Mr. Kid Sid, if I'm saying that right. Hi, everyone. Hi and greetings from Europe. Well, hi and greetings from the Western Hemisphere. Do you know the capital? Any idea, strategy for asking a raise? Oh, that's a very political question. What's the capital of Europe? I think if I was being facetious, a lot of people now would say Berlin, but I withdraw that answer. I retract my answer. Maria says, hi from the sunny city of Barranquilla, Colombia. Well, hello, and thank you for being here. Okay. So, we covered sort of the basics of if they ask you, what are your salary expectations on an application where you have to give a number? We covered that same question if they ask you in an interview. Another part of this that I know I'm going to get a question about sooner or later is the pointed question, what is your current salary? Right? That's another job interview question that's quite common. Now, in some regions, in some countries and regions, they have actual laws that make it illegal for people to ask you this question in a job interview. So maybe you're in a region where they're not allowed to ask that, okay? Now, what that means is that some people will ask it anyway, and you still have to deal with it. or you may never encounter this question. Okay. It's Brussels. That's Belgium, right? Belgium, Brussels. What was I saying? The whole Brussels thing just threw me. Because I remember, because there's 3 languages, right? There's English, there's Flemish, and what's the other language in Belgium? Is it French? I guess French, one of those. It's either French or German. Anyway, that's a geographic type question. So if they ask you the pointed question, what's your current salary? This is something you have to deal with. It makes people very uncomfortable. They don't know what to say, and there's a lot of pressure to just blurt out the actual answer. Okay? Right off the hop, remember, just because you're in a job interview and just because they're asking you questions doesn't mean that you have to answer. Okay? Just remember that. It feels like that. It feels like whatever they ask you, you have to answer. That's not actually the case. Okay? You don't have to answer anything. And in fact, what you can say to this question, if you wish, is you can say, well, I just have a personal policy of not giving away personal and confidential information like my salary history. I'm sure you understand. I don't give out that information, right? Sort of a very polite way of saying, no, I'm not going to answer that, right? You don't want to, if you're going to refuse to answer, it's good to be able to phrase that in a very eloquent, polite way that doesn't make the entire conversation super awkward, okay? Because a big part of job interviews is they're assessing how you are as a person, right? And if they feel awkward around you, or it's maybe aggressive, or they're getting bad vibes from you, there's a bit of hostility there, a lot of times that eliminates you. Not always, but a lot of the times that will eliminate you. So if you refuse to answer a question, and in this case, you have a perfectly reasonable backup for not answering this question, it's good to be able to phrase it politely, okay? So try to have a bit of a smile on your face when you say it, okay? It sort of lightens the mood. Kind of like what I'm trying to do now. I don't know if you call it a smile, but a smirk. Just looking pleasant and saying like, well, I have a personal policy of not giving out personal and confidential information like my salary history. I'm sure you understand. Okay? That's what I would say in response to that. Okay? Now, you may be okay with divulging that, okay? But that's the answer I would recommend, in all honesty. Because why do you think they're asking this question? They're asking it because they have no clue how much they should pay you. And so to get a sort of ballpark idea, they're going to make some assumptions about you. First of all, they're going to assume that whatever you were paid previously in your last job, you would be okay with that and maybe a little bit more. That's an assumption they're making, and that's what they're going to be operating on. So that's usually why they're asking this question. They have no idea what you're worth. Okay? So they figure, okay, well, if I pay them what they were making before, maybe a little bit extra, that would satisfy them. That's the assumption they're making about you. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's completely false. But the way people do modern job interviews, it's all assumptions, biases, stereotypes. This is what everything's based on. Okay? It sucks that people do it that way, and this is only done for interviews at the mid-level and lower. They don't do this to executives. You don't interview executives like this. I mean, because it doesn't reveal anything. The fact that I can give you guys hints on how to answer kind of proves that this doesn't really assess somebody properly, right? But there's other reasons they can ask this stuff too, and I've mentioned it before. Some companies will do essentially industrial espionage on their competitors by posting a fake job, having candidates from their competitors apply, getting them to an interview or a supposed interview, and then asking them this question: how much money do you make? right? And people will just tell them and they'll go, okay, thank you very much. Meanwhile, there was no job, right? None of these people are hired. It was all just a ploy to find out what your competitors are paying their employees. If you're planning to steal some talented people away from your competitor and have them work for you, now you know what to pay them, right? So there's all this kind of silly shenanigans that go on. Okay, who we got here? Val Starwind. I wish I had a name like that. It sounds very exciting. Hi and greetings from Houston, Texas. Houston, we have a problem. Thank you for your guidance. My interview is tomorrow and this live stream is very helpful. Well, thank you for saying so. I'm glad you're getting something out of it. Anna Kuzma says, thank you for your advices. Greetings from Croatia. Croatia. I don't know the capital of Croatia. When learning all these, it was all just Yugoslavia, and that was Belgrade. Silent. Shh. Is it okay to leave your second job slightly under the 1-year mark? What's a good reason to give when interviewing to why you're leaving a place when you're the only developer? I guess that is. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing necessarily bad with that. It depends on what your job prospects are and what you're leaving it for, right? But in itself, that's not like necessarily a red flag. If you left every job before the 1-year mark, that would start to be a red flag. Okay, like your third job in and you've never worked at a place for more than a year, that would be a red flag. Arigato says, salary information. Previous project information, especially when going to a competitor, can be less than great for an existing employer. Any tips around this? Previous project information, especially when going to a competitor, can be less than great for an existing employer. I don't understand precisely what you mean by that. Are you talking about jumping companies and disclosing information about the projects that you were working on in the original company? Previous project information. Like, as related to salary? Maybe if you could clarify that a little bit, Arigato. Just give me some more information on what you're asking. Gabriel says, hey, Bill, what do you think about personal projects on a resume? I'm probably going to cut them from my resume. Look, you and I both know that doing a bunch of projects just yourself, okay, especially if they're quite impressive, is a great thing, okay? It totally shows off your worth. It shows your value. It shows your initiative, your planning abilities, your execution abilities, et cetera, et cetera. We all know this is great. It's a hell of a lot better than sitting on your butt and doing nothing, okay? However, depending on what you're using your resume for, okay, namely, if you're going through recruiters and applying for jobs at large organizations, they probably won't know what to do with that information, and they probably won't see any value there, okay? We both know it is valuable, but they won't be able to see it because they're not really, that's not how they operate, okay? Now, if you're doing contract work, okay, and if you could somehow illustrate the value to them, you know, maybe, but yeah, like if you were getting a job on the hidden job market, you could definitely exploit the value of that stuff, okay? Because it works completely differently. You're dealing with people one-on-one. They're getting to know you a bit more. It's not such a highly artificial encounter like a job interview. It's more of a getting to know you as like a friend kind of vibe. And that's when, if you can demonstrate knowledge from these projects, that's when those can really help. Arigato says, are we at a point where inflation expectations can be cited in such discussions? No, I don't think so. Not yet. If things keep going on the trajectory they're going, in a year or two, we may get there, in my opinion. I'm coming from the perspective of having seen like the inflation in the 1970s and stuff like that, where it was in double digits for, I know some of Europe and North America. That's when that stuff was starting to create some interesting effects, but we're not anywhere near there yet. So not at the moment, but we may get there if things keep going. Greetings from Serbia and Germany. Thanks a lot. Greetings back. It's awesome to have you guys here, or have you here. Marco, thank you for being here. Arigato. Yes. Silent. Hi, I think you missed the second part of my question. Thanks for all the help. What was the second question? Is it okay to leave a second job? Yeah, I just got the whole second job thing. If you're the only developer, that's the only part I got. So if there was more silent, just if you can repost it. Coolburn, aka that. What would be a good reason to tell employers if you are made to resign from a previous company due to performance in sales? I've been jobless since 4 months after that. Well, that's not really salary related. You don't have to disclose anything. You can disclose that if you want, but you don't have to disclose that. They can ask you, and a blanket response is, they say, why did you leave? You say, well, I was just ready to do more. I'd want to apply my sales skills to a job like this. And then you talk about how you're a fit for this job. Okay? You don't have to disclose negative things about yourself if you feel that it paints you in a very bad light. Okay? This is not a deposition. They don't have the right to an answer to any question they ask. So if you don't want to reveal it, don't reveal it. I know that when people are just starting out, they are surprised by that answer, but it's true. Listen, anytime someone leaves a job, it's usually for a negative reason, right? Okay, on the extreme end, maybe you were fired, okay? But, whatever reason it was, maybe you were laid off, maybe you got tired of working there, maybe they didn't pay you enough money, maybe you had better opportunities somewhere else. Like, any reason to stop working there is going to be negative. It's not going to speak highly. And any reason you give, they can always make the assumption that, oh, you're a type of person where that's going to happen again, which is sheer conjecture and fantasy. But when everything is based on assumptions and heuristics and biases and, judging people on appearances and, superficial things like this, that's how these things go. So because that's how these job interviews operate, you don't have to disclose things that, without a big, long explanation would paint you in a negative light. Okay. B. Diaz says, thank you for your videos. I'd like to work abroad, but remotely from my desk in Southern Europe. I'm a wheelchair user, and most of the average companies are far from complying with access standards. I would like to contact you for more info. Yeah, that's like a sort of disability accessibility type thing in Southern Europe. I can give you broad sort of description, but not specifically for that. Look, whatever the issue is, okay, some employers will be receptive to it and be okay with it. Others won't, okay? Whether it's salary, whether it's your personality, whether it's your work history, whether it's a work gap, whether it's a physical disability, a mental disability requiring accommodation or not. Look, you're going to meet all kinds. Some people will be very favorable towards it. Some people won't. And so the key is just to go to a lot of people, okay? And as much as possible, lead with something that is pretty safe and, have them see your value before the issue comes up. If it's a physical disability or you're in a wheelchair, you don't want to lead with that, right? In my opinion, some people will advise you to lead with that and say like, I'm disabled, don't you have quotas for, hiring disabled people, and then play to that. Personally, for me, if it were me, I wouldn't lead with that, but some people do. But the point is, you're going to encounter many different employers that have a whole kaleidoscope of different attitudes when it comes to that stuff. So there isn't a blanket answer. It's just to try a lot of employers, and sooner or later, you're going to find a real fit where that's not even going to enter into it. Or if it does, it's going to be totally not an issue. Okay? That's just how these things go. It's a numbers game. So if you do encounter people that see that as a real problem, like, don't sweat it. Don't worry about it, and don't let it change your opinion of your prospects or anything like that. That's just an isolated case. You move on, and a lot of people won't think like that. So, don't worry, it'll work out. Great day, sir. How do you answer why are you leaving your current job? Well, yeah, like, look, we're going to confine today's live stream to salary questions, okay? Because there's a lot, and I want to tie all this up together, okay? So if you have any salary related or compensation related questions, that's what I'm going to get into today. I told people to hold those off so that we could do them all in one session. So feel free. Okay. So we had talked about a couple of things. We're talking about answering the question, what is your current salary? Look, the reason why they ask that question, what is your current salary? Like I said, is because they have no idea how much money they should pay you. And this leads to a larger issue, okay? The thing is, your compensation is a very abstract thing, okay? It's very hard for organizations to know how much somebody is worth. A lot of times they have no clue, okay? I'm deadly serious, and I know what I'm talking about here. They have no clue what people are actually worth, okay? Now, they have various schemes, like systems that they tell themselves that allows them to sort of come up with a system to pay people, okay? Like the most common is market price, okay? So what they do is, like, let's say you have a very common job, secretary, truck driver, something very common, okay? Every city will have many, many secretaries and many, many truck drivers in it, right? So you can go anywhere and you can look like, okay, how much should we pay a truck driver? Well, we can get a mountain of data from the government. The government knows how much everyone is paid. If for no other reason, then, you've got to declare that if you're paying taxes. So the government knows all this. So they publish a lot of data. And this is like in almost every country. They'll have data freely available that you can look up. And you can find, like, okay, for a truck driver, this is how many truck drivers there are in this region. And this is the average salary for a truck driver, the average right down the middle. On average, they're paid, say, 100 of whatever currency we're talking about. Okay? $100, 100 francs, 100 euros, whatever. That's the average. That means 50% of truck drivers are paid more than that. 50% of truck drivers are paid less than that. It's the average amount. And then the normal range goes anywhere between, say, 50 and 150, with 100 being the average. Okay? So that's what truck drivers are paid. So when a company wants to figure out how much should we pay our truck drivers, one thing they can do is they say, well, we just pay market price. So we pay 100 for a truck driver. And it could be anywhere between 50 and 150, but our average is 100. Okay? So that's how they come to the conclusion that if you're a truck driver, you're worth that much money. What's that based on? Nothing. Let's say you live in a city where all the companies are cheap and there's an overabundance of truck drivers. Maybe the average goes down. And then they tell you that's what you're worth, right? And then 5 years later, there's a big demand for truck drivers, and a lot of people that were driving trucks have quit and they've moved on to other careers. So there's a lack of truck drivers. Now the market price goes way up. It goes up to 200, and that's what you're worth, right? So is that what you're worth just because, they're looking at the average? What if, as a truck driver, okay, with you doing your job, you enable the company to add $1 million of profit to its bottom line every year? Okay? If you were to quit and there's no one to drive the truck, they would lose $1 million, not of revenue, but of profit every year. Are you still worth 100? Probably not, right? You have an effect of how much money you're making the company. Let's say if you do a really good job, you could boost that to $1.5 million a year profit. Are you still only worth 100? Right? Like these are, like I'm just scratching the surface here. How much somebody is worth is an unanswerable question because there are many different ways of assessing somebody's value. Okay? So this is the problem. When they ask you, what's your value? How much money do you need? There is no right answer, really. Okay? Now, you may be up against their expectations, right? They have decided that you're only worth X. Or this other company has decided that you could be worth up to X plus 100. Right? I'm sure everybody here has a story about you interviewed with a company and you thought you were only worth X, but then they offered you X plus 50 or X plus 100. And you were like, sure, well, you're not going to say anything, but you were like, wow, that's surprising. They're offering me a lot more than I expected, right? And I'm sure everybody here could probably give an example of the opposite, where, they offered you an insultingly little amount of money thinking that that's what you're worth, right? So, I mean, that's the sort of backdrop against which this question is being asked. Now, the employer's perspective, and I'm speaking from experience here, is that they want to get you for as little money as possible. Okay? So they actually don't really care how much you're worth. They want to see if they can get you for as little as possible. Okay? They behave much like we do when we go to the store. Okay? You see a loaf of bread for, it costs 100, and you think, okay, yeah, I could pay 100. Then you see a loaf of bread, same loaf of bread for 10. And you think, yes, I got a really good deal. And you're happy, right? They feel exactly the same way about you. Okay, so regardless of what the absolute numbers are, they're going to try and get you, for less. And they're going to apply all these tactics. They're not going to pay any more than they need to. And that's their goal in this entire process. Your goal is the opposite. You're going to try and get as much as you can, right? You don't want to be eliminated, but you want to get hired and you want them to pay as much as possible. So first of all, a lot of people feel stressed when they get asked, what are your salary expectations? Because they feel pressure to lowball themselves, right? You want to say a low answer because you feel, I don't want to eliminate myself, right? And maybe you have to do that in the beginning. You have to maybe think that until you get to the point where they see your value. And then if they like you, right, and it would be painful for them to have to go with somebody else, then you ask for more. What's another effect of this? I've heard people say to this question, what are your salary expectations? They say, I don't want to have to play these games. I want to give them my exact range because if they can't pay me the high end of it, why am I wasting my time talking to these people? Right? I'd rather know now and not have my time wasted by going to another couple of interviews just to find out that they're going to offer me the minimum, and that's insulting. Incorrect. Because here's what's going on. Like I said, they're going to try and get you for as little as possible, especially when they don't know you. They don't see your value. Okay? What you want is you want to show them that you're awesome. And if they firmly believe that you're awesome and they would love to hire you, at the end, if you ask for a little more money, they're going to be like, sure, not a problem. Assuming it's reasonable, you know? So you see how the game kind of changes from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, right? You don't have to answer any questions about your previous salary. You don't have to stick to a number. If you set a number at the beginning, you know, and then several weeks later, after they've then disclosed all the details of the job, and now you've gone to multiple interviews, you can say a different number. This isn't a court of law, you know. It is what it is. You want what you want, you know. Now listen, if you have no other options and you're absolutely desperate for a job, then you pretty much have to accept anything, right? But the entire principle of negotiation assumes that you have other options, okay? If you have no other option than to take whatever they offer, it's kind of impossible to negotiate. You can bluff, but if they call your bluff, you just have to admit it was a bluff, and then the whole game's over anyway. So, you know what I'm saying? That's the reality of these situations, right? The way to negotiate is to have other options. We're talking about taxation perks. How do I create a database? A taxation database? That's kind of outside the scope of this. What is your weakness? What can I answer? I have a video on that. So go look at that. We're talking about salary today. So how do I ask for a raise? Well, that's actually it's great that you ask this now, because the concept I was just talking about, that applies here. Okay? Remember, like, there's no hard, fast answer to how much you're worth. Okay? Now, in an organization, what they're working around is you can't have somebody that's at this level being paid less than somebody at this level, right? Like, worker, supervisor, manager, vice president, executive, like whatever. The pay has to go up, right? So if you're applying for this job right here, okay, and this job right here, that person's boss makes, say, 100, okay, you can't ask for 100, okay? You'd be making the same amount as your boss, and that results in all kinds of problems, right? Okay, so there are some restrictions, but within the range, like let's say the person underneath you, okay? There's a person underneath you, maybe it's a casual laborer or whatever, but they're making 50, okay? So they're making 50, your boss is making 100, so your range would be something like 55 to 95, something like that, okay? So there is a reasonable range that an employer will be restricted to, okay? But within that range, who's to say you're worth 55 and who's to say you're not worth 95? It's all abstract. It's all based on people's opinions and perspectives. It's not based on anything real. There's no way to tell in absolute terms how much you're worth. The only thing that could demonstrate with facts how much you're worth is if you say, I'm worth 95, and they say, no, we're not going to pay it. And then you say, okay, goodbye. And you go to a competitor and they pay you 95, right? That's the only way you could say what you're worth, like, you know, without any contradiction. Okay. But in order for that to happen, you would have options. You'd have to have a job offer from a competitor that says, we'll pay you 95, right? So, other than that, it's all just perspectives. I think this, and the employer says, no, I think that. Right? The only way to force someone's hand is to say, well, look, I got a competing job offer. Okay, so look, pay me 95 and I'll stay. And if you can't, I'm gone. So it's up to you. Ball's in your court. What would you like to do? And if they say, no, you're not worth 95, you're like, okay, see ya. And you get 95 somewhere else. If they say, okay, wait, don't be so hasty. Let's talk about this, because they know you bring in 500 a year for the company, right? Then they're like, okay, we'll pay you 95 if it gets you to stay. Right? That way we don't have to start from scratch with somebody else and pay for a recruitment and selection process and waste everybody's time with multiple rounds of job interviews and write the descriptions and pay to post them. And it saves all of that. Right? So how do you ask for a raise? So here's what this question really is. Okay. Employer says, we think you're worth 50. We'd like to offer you a job for 50. And you say, yes, that's acceptable. I am worth 50. I will work for 50. You stay there a year or two, then you turn around and you say, you know how I've been working for 50 this whole time? And we've both been happy with that arrangement? Well, I've changed my mind. Now I'm worth 60. Your employer's reaction is going to be, well, that's clearly not true, because you've been working for 50 and we've been paying you for 50 and you've stayed here. You're worth 50. So do I want to pay you more money when I don't have to? No, I don't. So sorry. Okay. Now, they may decide to give you money for personal reasons, for emotional, humanitarian reasons. I really like you. You do a great job. I think you deserve a little money to keep you happy so that your performance doesn't decline. So I'll give you 60 like you want. But an employer's position is pretty much going to be like, no, you're worth 50, as evidenced by the fact that I'm paying you 50 and you're staying. So no dice. I'm not giving you a raise. Okay. Now, once again, if you have another option, if you've got a job offer from a competitor that says, yeah, we'd love to pay you 65. You can go back to your boss, say, look, I'm clearly worth 65. They say, how do you know that? You say, never mind. I'm worth 65. Can you pay me 65, or I'm going to have to perhaps go somewhere else? And then, you're golden, because either they pay you 65, which is great, or they don't, and you take the offer at the competitor for 65. Right? So when you have options, you have something to negotiate with. So the question, how should I ask for a raise? You can say whatever you want to try and make a compelling case. Well, I'm doing the work of 3 people and we're bringing in this much money. And it's been 5 years since my last raise. And I know the market price for someone with my skills, according to this website, is 80. So I'd like a bump up to at least 60. So you can do that, and maybe it'll work. But at the end of the day, it's just a judgment call. So there you go. So we got some spam in here. Let's see. Can I do anything about it? No, I can't do anything about it from here. Oh, well. I'll know for next time. Is it better to apply on a company website versus a recruiter? If those were my only 2 choices, I would say company website possibly. But those are 2 pretty bad choices. I wouldn't pick either of those, actually. I would go in the hidden job market. I've done some videos on how to do that. Basically, you contact hiring managers, but not the hiring managers you're thinking of. You go up to executives, including CEOs. And yes, that's possible. And yes, people do that every day. And yes, it works a hell of a lot better than applying to internet job ads, which is the default thing. Yes. You can delete comments, or your chat moderator can. Yeah, you see, I am using Streamlabs OBS. And I'm not really a huge fan of it. And it doesn't allow me to moderate comments. Like I can see the chat, but I can't edit anything. So unfortunately I can't do anything about that, but whatever, that's fine. I think we're okay. If you get offended to the point where you have a brain aneurysm, that would be a problem, but I think we're all good. Yeah. Cool. So a while ago, I did no problem, Christine. No problem. Sorry, it's not like a very good answer that I'm sure you weren't hoping for that answer. But listen, there's a whole universe of good jobs out there that exist that are usually better than the jobs that you would get through public job postings, okay? 80% of jobs are not posted. All the ones that you're seeing, like posted on the internet or on company websites, all of those jobs, that's 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there, okay? The other 80% are not posted. And that's called the hidden job market, okay? So those jobs are there, it's just that you can't search for them like, by job postings. The way you access those jobs is you reach out to a bunch of organizations that you would like to work for. You go to the right people. You basically put out a feeler saying, hey, I'm here. I'm an expert in this. I can solve this problem. If ever you're looking for that, let me know. So you kind of throw your hat in the ring for any of those types of jobs if they come up. Now, sooner or later, those jobs will come up. Okay. And when they do, it's a lot cheaper, easier, and better for the company to contact someone like you to see if you're a fit before they resort to posting it publicly. Okay. So the other thing is that as you get higher and higher level jobs, from like worker to supervisor to manager to, director to executive, the higher you go, the more of those jobs are hidden. So if you get to executive type jobs, it's something like 95% of all those jobs are hidden. Only 5% of those are actually posted publicly. And, so as we go up, more and more are hidden. That's how people get jobs. Like when they hire executives, they don't have job postings where you have to fill out an application online and you go to an interview where they ask you, what are your salary expectations? That's not how they do that stuff. It's a completely different process because, you actually need to get the right person and not just anyone that'll do. Okay. So I mean, that's kind of the deal. So there's this whole universe of jobs out there that you can get. Okay. So research that. I have some information. There's a lot of information out there on the hidden job market. A lot of young people, when you first tell them about this, their immediate reaction is denial. No, surely that can't be true. Well, every job, every contract job, every consulting client I've gotten for the last 10, 15 years has been exclusively in the hidden job market. I assure you, it's a thing. So read up on it, okay? And develop your ability to tap that and to sell yourself. If you're an extrovert, you can do this by meeting people. If you're an introvert, you can do this 100% online using things like LinkedIn, okay? So whoever you are, you can do this. It's just a matter of learning it and knowing yourself and having some basic sales skills, the kind that you would have in a job interview. Okay, so it's out there. So there's good news. This is there. And the more you know, the further you'll go. And you can tap some of that. OBS Studio is better than Streamlabs. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I know there's a lot of other options out there. The other one is, I think, StreamYard, right? StreamYard's very popular for people that do live streams. I've always been curious to investigate that, but someone says you basically need to network with various people. Yes. But the word networking can be like a dirty word for especially like introverts and people that aren't into that kind of thing. I assure you it is possible and very possible to do. I am an introvert. I don't like to go to cocktail parties and rub elbows with people I don't know and chit chat. I find that a very inefficient and off-putting process. I find it's almost completely ineffective by the time you invest so much time into that to come across one person that you actually wanted to meet. I find it extremely inefficient. So I find that doing this online with things like LinkedIn and Google Maps much more efficient. And in my case, it's been much more effective. So, yeah, but depending on the type of person you are, the background you have, and the industry you're in, there's going to be slight variations. Okay. So one thing I was wanting to say to illustrate this concept of like how much somebody is worth, know your worth, right? That's what they say. What the hell does that actually mean? A lot of times for most people, it means like the most absolute basic thing you can imagine. Go to a website like Glassdoor and PayScale and enter your profession, your occupation in your region and see what the pay range is. Like there's an average and there's a minimum and a maximum, right? That's their definition of it. But I've used an example before of like, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak at Apple, right? You could use anybody. I mean, you have two individuals, right? Person A and person B. And together, they found a company that makes $1 billion a year profit. Okay? But then person A does another thing on their own. They found a second company that flops. It makes zero. Okay? So how much is person A worth? Like if you were to hire them, you said, I want that person. How much would you have to pay them to work for you? Now, person A plus person B equals $1 billion a year, but person A equals zero, right? Because they had a flop. So how much are they worth? You can't answer that question, can you? How much is person B worth? Are they worth $1 billion? Or are they worth $500 million? Maybe the combination of A and B is what led to that value, right? You see, we don't have the data on that. It's impossible to say. So if you work for a successful company and that company is doing very well and you decide to get a job at one of your competitors, they're maybe the number 2 company and they're not as profitable, but they look very favorably at people that come from your company because you're the industry leader, you're company number 1. And as a result, they might think you have a high value. Now, is that true? Excuse me. It's a judgment call, right? There just isn't any data on it. So what you're worth in practice comes down to what somebody will pay you. There's no other real definition of it. And some companies will pay very little, some companies will pay a lot, right? What's the moral of this story? It's that everyone here can be worth a hell of a lot more than you think you are. It could be based on your track record. How much money have you made for companies or have you saved? It could be based on your potential. It could be based on your knowledge and experience and education. Maybe you haven't been tapping all of that yet. Okay? It could be based on things like market price, right? There's many ways of looking at it. And there's no right answer. Or you could go into business for yourself and make $1 million. Right? In this day and age, as far as I'm concerned, that's the eventuality of this whole job search process. Okay? Because there's never been an easier time to actually set up on your own and successfully be in business for yourself. You know, more and more people are doing it now than ever before. There's been an explosion in that. So if ever you've thought about that, you know, that's a possibility. And I've helped a lot of companies get established, actually, like startups and things like this. So, I mean, you know, not like tech startups and stuff. I'm, you know, more traditional businesses, you know, just want to go into business for yourself. There's a lot of opportunity out there. Okay. And that's another definition of how much you're worth. What's your potential? What could you make if you set up shop for yourself? A lot of people, what they do, like if you have a profession, like you're an accountant or something like that, you can go work for an accounting company. You could work for one of the big 4 accounting companies, or you could just set up for yourself and do accounting as a private practice, you know, a contractor. You know, maybe you've had a few years working for large organizations. Maybe the time has come to set up on your own. Anyway, something to think about. That's for another chat. So we've talked about several aspects of what's your salary expectation. Okay. And we can talk about negotiation. Okay. Salary negotiation. Now, hopefully everybody knows that it's impossible to really negotiate salary at the beginning of a interview process. Okay, if you try to negotiate at the very beginning, it won't work. They'll just eliminate you. They'll just say, no, you want too much money. I'm talking to 10 other candidates that would be happy with less money than what you're asking for. So no dice, you know, we're going to end the process here. I'm going to adjust my video because I'm so low tech, I don't even have like an automatic white balance or, you know, brightness or anything like that. So there we go. And if you want me to make my face purple, I can do that too, just for fun. It'd be amusing. Okay, Sam Kello says, I'd like to ask, how does one go about getting a work visa to legitimately work in the US? I don't know. I'm not in the US and I'm not an immigration expert. So sorry about that. Someone else says, interviewer said that if I am to be accepted, he cannot give me the full amount during the first 3 months. Can I ask to write this in my contract that he will have to bring it up after the test period? Well, look, if it was me and someone said that, I'd be like, okay, fine. When can you bring it up? In 3 months? What are you going to bring it up to? Can you write that in? Like, and you let them answer the question. You ask a series of questions. Okay, you don't tell them what you want. You just ask a question. What are you going to bring it up to? And then let them answer. And then whatever they say, you're like, okay. So can you write that in the so what you just said that you're going to do this, can you put that in writing in the contract? If you put that in writing, then it's a deal. Now, if there's a problem with them putting in writing what they just said, that's a huge red flag, okay? That says they're just clearly lying to you and they're trying to get you for cheap. It's a standard thing that has been known where they say they're going to pay you more, but they don't. And they just got you for cheap, right? Okay, so if that's what they're trying to do, this will be the test of that, okay? That's also been known for when they say it's like a temporary position, but could turn into a permanent position, you know, if you do a good job, something like that. So you say, okay, whatever, just write that in. Do you have a problem with writing that in the contract? If they can't put in writing what they're saying to you, just ignore it. Say, like it's a lie, okay? They're going to say all kinds of stuff. That's not true. This is the world we live in, unfortunately, especially for lower level jobs. This is what we're seeing all the time. And that's usually the sign of a bad company. There are good companies, there are bad companies. That's the sign of a bad one. Okay? They're not all like that, but some of them are. Someone says, what do you think about assessment tests happening just after you apply? In some cases, that's fine. If it's like an entry-level job, we sometimes see that. Okay? Like I remember when I was starting out, there's some companies that were like hiring, they're hiring people right out of school, people with no experience, and they would put you through an entire day of tests. So you would go for like an interview, and then they would say, okay, we'd like to talk to you some more. We have some tests we'd like you to do. So come back on this day. And then you'd go for like that day, a second day, and it would be an entire day, like 8 hours of, psychological tests and intelligence tests and, I can't even remember, all kinds of stuff. And then at the end of that, in my case, they were just like, they didn't call back. So, it's, you sometimes see that. I hear people telling stories of having done stuff like that. So it's a thing. It's a thing. I mean, look, all you're really risking is your time being wasted, right? I mean, you don't have to pay for anything. It might be an inconvenience, but if there's a job at the end of it, you just have to accept that, okay? Getting a job is like doing sales. You are selling yourself. And what salespeople do, if you don't work in sales, is they spend effort, pursuing different leads, like different customers, different prospects, okay? And the risk is that that person, after you put time into it, they just say no, okay? And that's going to happen. Most of the time, that's how it goes. But 10% of the time, 20% of the time, whatever it is, someone says yes, okay? So you have to be prepared to go through, 10 no's to get one yes, something like that, right? That's just how it goes. And if you want 2 people to say yes, you have to go through 20 no's to get 2 people to say yes, and so on, right? That's just the name of the game. Job search is like that, okay? So you have to be willing to sort of donate your time and your effort. And maybe it doesn't work out, but you have to go through those to get a job offer, okay? Now look on the bright side. It's not a total loss. You're getting experience doing this. The more experience you have, the more you know, and the better you will handle interviews and the better you'll perform in interviews. So it's not a loss. Some people just go to those, even if they're not really interested in the job, just to get experience with job interviews. So you always risk having your time wasted and having your effort wasted, but that's unfortunately just the name of the game. The more attempts you make, the more chances you have of getting hired. Okay. If you're an introvert, if you work in operations, like some operations background, you will regard this as annoying because it's like you're used to your effort always directly paying off pretty much in a result. Okay? But that's not how sales works. Sales is based on statistics and probabilities, right? So 80% of the time it doesn't pay off, but 20% of the time it does, and you make back all the effort that you put in, to the previous 8. Where are we here? Are you guys getting sick and tired of hearing me talk and drone on forever? Interviewer said that if I'm to be accepted, okay. Pranay, if I'm saying that right. Pranay says, what do you think about assessment tests happening just after you apply? Yeah, okay, we did that one. Is it disadvantageous that the candidate might obtain a 75% rise for performing the same work and having the same job title at this interviewing business during the interview phase? Disadvantageous for candidates. You mean like a 75% rise in salary, like in compensation? No, that's not unheard of. I mean, I agree if your point is that it's kind of silly and it perhaps shouldn't happen, but no, we see that. Now, it can be good or it can also be kind of bad because, like I was saying earlier at the beginning of this stream, some companies pay above market, which means that they pay like above the market price. That can be a sign of a good company because, they pay their employees well and thus they get the better employees eventually end up working at that company. They get the pick of the labor pool because they're paying the best salary. But it can also be a signal that that company might be bad because perhaps they make their employees so miserable that the only way to keep them there is to pay them a salary premium, right? That also has been known. I famously worked for a company like that. Famously in my own mind, that is. Not to anyone else. I'm a legend in my own mind, just so you know. What do you think about assessment types happening just after you apply? In the project management field? Well, yeah, I mean, it could be, that would not surprise me. Project management field can be anything from a mom and pop shop to a, large, civil engineering project. I mean, it's quite varied. But yeah, you do see that massive range in project management because project management is so general. It goes across industries and there's a huge scale variation too. I used to be a project manager for a few years. And what do you feel about remote jobs hiring worldwide? What do I feel about it? It's good. It's great. It's more efficient. I'm not sure of what the current hiring practices are doing that because of recent events in the last couple of years. I don't think things have improved, but I think it's a good thing. But listen, whatever the employment arrangement is, don't believe empty promises. Don't believe any promises. The only time it matters is when you get a firm offer letter and then they start paying you. Until that happens, it's nothing. It's just an empty promise. And we all know how reliably a lot of recruiters keep their promises. Right? Not at all, in case that isn't obvious. Like the thing about going globally is that the employer is not in the same country as you, if that's kind of what the implication is. So that complicates things for people adhering to laws, right? If they're not in your country, how do you get them to conform to any laws? Like, if they made a contract with you and they broke it, they said they were going to pay you, they owe you all this money, but they haven't paid you. I mean, how do you enforce that? That's the problem, right? That's where it gets more complicated. So, if they give you an offer letter and you don't really give them anything that would be a red flag, like you don't give them all your personal information, you don't do a ton of work for them before they give you any money, stuff like this, and they start paying you, then it's fine. If it's a reputable company that's famous the world over and they're known for, having a good reputation, great. If there's some fly-by-night thing no one's ever heard of, and you can't find any footprint of them online, obviously that's not good, and I would look elsewhere. AI-based interviews, that's for another chat, because we're talking mainly about salary. If you work for a business management firm and if your client lost something, how do you ease their pain by speaking in a diplomatic way? Well, that's not really salary related. Look, short answer is just be nice, empathize with them, apologize on behalf of the organization. I'm not in the United States. Americans are very fearful of of constantly being sued, and so they don't want to apologize or admit to any wrongdoing. I don't operate like that way. I'm not in a country that is paranoid like that. If you guys made a mistake, if someone in your organization made a mistake, just say, I apologize. We made a mistake. That was our mistake, and I apologize for it. And we're going to try our best to fix it. Would this be okay? Would that be okay? If someone needs to vent, depending on the circumstances, you can maybe just let them vent for a second, assuming it's not getting into insults and vulgarity, and then just try and fix it. And then say, I hope this, smooths over and makes up for your lack of experience. Sometimes you might have to give a concession of some kind. But, that's all I'll say. Learning manners and learning how to speak professionally is a really useful skill. Not that you would know from me doing live chats. I've never been a great stream of consciousness type speaker. So, but being extremely polite and trying to make the other person feel important. Those are kind of probably the two most important things. If you work for a business management firm and if your client lost something, okay, we do that. I've applied for 30 to 40 jobs so far, only went through 2 interview screening and got rejected on both. I have 3 years experience, still no luck. Yeah, especially if you're applying online, you have to apply for a lot more than 30 to 40 jobs on average to get something. If you're doing it in the hidden job market, talking to 30, 40 people would have probably got you hired by now. I got an offer letter from a company, but the name on the offer letter is different from what they have told me earlier. When asked about it, they told me it is an Indian subsidiary company. What do you think about that? Well, I don't think it matters too much what their name is, as long as they keep their promises. They put in writing what they said they were going to do, and there are no surprises. I agree that's not great, but they did have an explanation for it. If it's a really big company, that wouldn't surprise me. So that in itself is not a huge red flag to me. But like everything, it depends on the details of the situation. I just got a new job. I like my current employer too. What's the best and most likable way to resign? Well, we're getting into questions that are not really salary based. I wanted to stick to that, but what's the best way to likable way to? Well, just be polite and be professional. I mean, you just say you can. What I would do is I would send an email or something in writing. I would also talk to the person in person, and I would say, thank you very much for taking a chance on me and having me work here. I've enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed working here with you and with all these other people, and I wish you nothing but the best. And, no hard feelings. I've really enjoyed my time. It's sad that I have to leave, but I have to pursue some of my goals, my personal goals, and that's where I'm going. And, I hope we're cool, and I wish you all the best. I mean, just something, words to that effect. There's really no template, just say something from the heart. Have it be 100% pleasant, regardless of how you feel. Have it be 100% pleasant, and you're fine. Just a reminder to everybody, I've mentioned the hidden job market. I've mentioned a bunch of things here. As always, if you want to go deeper, I have 2 courses that are in the link below, the description box below. One is called Get Hired, and that's like everything, the sort of company's expert manual from beginning to end, how to get hired, posted job market, hidden job market, all of that stuff, all in one place, with templates, scripts, all that kind of stuff. So if that's of any interest to you, check that out. Several people have bought that recently and said nice things about it. I also have The other course is called the $100 MBA. And I mentioned it before, but that's something that's been pretty useful to some people. If you are interested in learning business, in particular, you are interested in learning all the material in a Master's of Business Administration, which is the sort of gold standard for how to learn business. You can take this course. It costs $100. It's an alternative to paying like $10,000 and taking an actual MBA from a university. What my course is it's unaccredited. Okay, so you can't have it, after like letters after your name, MBA. The reason for that is because there's no tests or assignments or anything, any kind of evaluation. You get the books, the same books that they teach out of in a lot of universities around the world, like Harvard and things like this. You get to read the same textbooks that they're doing. And, you learn the same material. You can go as deep into it as you want, or you could just skim it if that's all you're interested in. But, in an MBA, they teach you all the different topics in business: marketing, accounting, operations. They teach you things like problem solving, HR, things like organizational theory, stuff like that. The whole shebang-a-bang. So, also questions like how to communicate and all this kind of stuff. How to be a manager. So it can be useful if you're in your career. It can teach you the skills. Or if you have an ambition someday of perhaps going into business for yourself in whatever shape or form, even if it's like just a YouTube channel or something like that, it can help you with all that stuff. So that's the other course, $100 MBA. Check it out below. Yeah, I was going to get into salary negotiation. I'm not getting a lot of questions about that, though. Let's see here. I'm behind, but sometimes the mistake is expensive enough. Okay. Thank you, for sure. What should I write in my resume if I have zero experience in any field, just graduated? Well, that's an excellent question. What should you write on it? Well, obviously you're going to write your education. Do you have any volunteer work, anything like that? Do you have any high school like jobs or casual jobs? Obviously you can write that. Have you done any projects, either outside of school or within school that, you're proud of, that show your value? If not, then you can take specific projects and things or work you've done in school and put those as items on your resume. Okay. They were, say you did a project really well. You scored top of the class. You were commended by your instructor. Things like this that they show your worth. Okay. Another thing you can do is just go to Google or go to Bing, actually. Google is good for many things, but for this particular thing, I think Bing.com, Bing.com is actually better because you're going to do an image search. Okay. So you type in resume, like entry-level resume, something like that. And you do an image search, and what will come back is like a whole bunch of pictures of resumes, and you can click on them and make them bigger. And these are all like examples of resumes that you can look to see what other people in your situation, the types of things they're putting on their resume. Okay. And that should give you some ideas. Okay. Okay, someone says, what if I tell them as an employee, I would like to work in way less salary, which was offered in the job description? What are the chances of getting hired as well as consequences? Now, you would think that would work. Okay. You're saying like, look, I'm prepared to work for less salary than you're offering. Okay. They will see that as a red flag. Okay. They will not see that as an advantage, because what they're going to assume from you having said this is that either you're desperate for a job, which is not good in their eyes, or you're worth far less than they need for someone to be worth in that job. Okay? So that's how they're going to interpret it, right? You're basically saying, I'm not worth the minimum amount that you're paying for this job. I'm worth, you're paying somewhere between 20 and 30. I'm worth 10. That's what you're saying by saying this, okay? That's how they will interpret it. So for that reason, I would not say that. I know you're trying to like make yourself look more attractive, but that's going to backfire in most situations, I fear. But good question, because many people think this. You're asking the question, but many people are thinking this. So yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably good for salary negotiation. Did anyone have any last questions before we end this? We've got a lot of people participating today, which is great to see. Thank you all for being here, by the way. I think what I'll do in the future is just to prevent the spam. There's a setting that says, like who can participate. Is it only members or only subscribers or everyone? So I think in the future, I'm going to set that to everyone. Instead of everyone, which is now, I'm going to set it to subscribers only. So everyone can see it, but the only people that can chat are subscribers. So, so subscribe if you're not subscribed to my channel. And then you can participate. So someone says, let's see here. What if we tell them an employee? Okay. How would you know if some recruiter or whoever tried to lowball you? Is there an obvious sign? Well, listen, one of the things you should be doing before you go to the job interview is do that thing I said about going to payscale.com or glassdoor.com and having an idea of the average price for someone with your education, skills, and abilities, okay? So you have some idea of your worth. So if you know that on average, people pay someone in your position with your background, let's say 100, okay? And these people are offering you 30, I mean, you would know that that's an obvious lowball, like a ridiculously low amount of money. You know that you're worth more than that, okay? But like I said, employer behavior is going to be to try and get you for as little as possible, okay? They're going to say and do a whole bunch of different things to convince you that you're only worth this much and that you should take the job for this much. They'll say things like, well, we don't pay more than that for more than 30 for this position. They'll say that. It's a lie. They'll say that, well, if you don't take it, I've got somebody else, coming along in 5 minutes that will take it. That also is probably a lie. They'll say, no, you're not worth this. The average price for someone with that is not 100, it's 30. That's a lie. Like they'll say all kinds of things to get you to accept the job for a low amount of money and be satisfied with it. Okay? That's the thing. You have to expect that. Okay? You have to stay in the game long enough till they start to see your value and they see what you could bring and why they should hire you. And if you've done that correctly and luck is on your side, you will get to the final round where they then offer you a job. Okay? And only then is the time to start really thinking about how much you want to work for. Until you get to that point, you have nothing to bargain with. So if they bring up pay and they say, well, we can only pay you this, you say things like, well, that could work, right? You don't want to commit to something really low, but you don't want to disqualify yourself. So the secret is to get to the end. Once you're at the end, they offer you the job, then you can say, this is great. I'll give you this, but I need this pay. Scratch out that number and write in this number and you got a deal. Right? And, if you're absolutely desperate for a job, like I said, you can't really negotiate if you only have one option. If you know your worth and you're applying to a lot of places, maybe you got this job offer rather quickly. You can get others, or you're pursuing several opportunities at once. Then you have options, and then you can negotiate. I see some companies have a salary range. Why some companies don't? Because employer behavior is, like I said, they want to convince you that you should take the job for a very little amount of money and be happy with it, right? And if they were to post the range, let's say they tell you they're in the job posting that the range is between 20 and 80, right? When it comes to the job offer, they offer you a job and it's for 30, right? How are you going to feel about that, knowing that they could have gone as high as 80? You're probably going to say, well, no, I want 75, right? So if they don't disclose that it would have gone up to 80 and they just give you an offer for 30, there's a higher chance you'll just accept it, right? That's why they don't disclose it. It's all a ploy to get you to accept a job for a low amount of money and be happy with it. If they can convince you that they're paying you a reasonable amount of money and it's actually a really good amount of money for what you do, even though that's a total lie, they're going to try and do it because it's to their advantage. Daniel says, I was applied for a job at £25,000 a year. I was then asked what my salary expectation was. When I offered to go for a lower salary, they then offered me the full $25,000. Why do they ask? Well, look, if it was $25,000 already and you said, well, I'd prefer it to be 50, they may say, well, we should eliminate this candidate because even if we give them the job, they're not going to be happy with the pay, right? They're not a fit. We suspect that if we hire them, they will be dissatisfied with the money they're making, and consequently, they will be looking for other jobs and they will take the first better job offer that comes along, so they won't be sticking around. So this is not a good candidate, right? That's why they're asking that. Daniel says, apologies for the typos using a phone. Hey, you're doing pretty good with a phone. Okay, you one of those people that can go like 1,000,000 miles an hour with the two thumbs there? That's pretty impressive. Because people can like type faster than me with their thumbs, and I'm using like my hands. I think I'm pretty good typing, but I've seen kids do like, it's almost like they're writing shorthand or something. If you can like type with your thumbs at almost the speed that somebody is talking, that's how you know you're good. Put that on your resume. Sword Fighter says, hello, Sword Fighter. We got a super chat from Santa Trinita, if I'm saying that right. Santa Trinita for £2. Should self-fund 6K qualification. What? To get higher wages. Should self-fund 6K qualification? You'll have to explain what 6K qualification is. I don't know what that is. Maybe is it a British thing? If we're talking pound sterling. You are helping us a lot. Thank you. I feel like I'm just rambling and talking in an unending, unbroken rant. So thank you for saying that. It makes me feel a lot better about this. MA says, hi, Bill. If one gets a job with better pay, how does one tell one's current employer one wants to leave without destroying the relationship? If one gets a job with better pay. Well, that's like similar to a question somebody asked earlier, like, how do I say I resign? I just want to say that in absolute terms, that doesn't matter because you're leaving anyway. Now, I understand why you're asking. You don't want to burn any bridges, okay? That's good. So here's what, without really thinking about it too much, here's what I would kind of do. I would send it in writing. So like you send an email. I would also, like, you want to send it in writing so it's formal. You also want to talk to perhaps your boss in person so it is amiable and friendly, okay? I would send the email, I'd hit send, and I'd immediately go talk to my boss. And I would, like, in the email, it would just be very sparse. It would say, I'm giving you notice that I am, giving you notice to leave. I will be leaving on this day. Like, you should know how many days or weeks you by law you should work, right? If you need to give 2 weeks notice or 4 weeks notice or whatever it is for your region and how long you've been working there. So you should know that. So you say, I'm giving you notice on this day that this other day will be my last day, 3 weeks from now or whatever. Thank you very much. And that's it really, your name. And then when you go see your boss in person, it's going to be all friendly. It's going to be like, listen, I want to thank you personally for having me work here. Just so you know, I have decided to move on. And so I'm giving you notice that this will be my last day. I just want you to know I've appreciated everything you've done. I've enjoyed my time here. I've learned a hell of a lot, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to, any competitor or, if you're going somewhere benign, you could say, I'm not going to any competitor, should be no issues. I'm leaving on good terms. If you're going to a competitor, I would say, I'm going to the competitor, but, if you've signed an agreement, an NDA, I would say, I have no intention whatsoever of violating that. I'm leaving on good terms and I intend to honor all agreements. And that'll be it. Thank you very much. Pleasantries, smile, that kind of thing. I hope this makes sense and, that kind of thing. James says, hello, I had a phone interview and was asked the salary I earn at my current job. I would like to know if that is a good question to be asked. What is the right answer to give in such a situation? I covered that at the beginning of this stream. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Okay. If it were me, the automatic thing out of my mouth would be, I have a personal policy where I don't disclose personal and confidential information like my salary history. I'm sure you understand. Just default. That's what I would say. Now, if they get upset or there's some problem with that, then that's a red flag, right? It's like somebody coming up to you and saying, what is your social insurance number or social security number or some other, like your passport number or something like that? You don't have to disclose that. I mean, if you're in court and you're ordered by a judge to do it, that's another matter. But you're not in court, okay? This is, just because somebody asks you doesn't mean you have to tell them. Okay? I would not make up an answer, like I would not just invent a number, because that could go both ways. You could undervalue yourself or you could overvalue yourself. Like, you're flying blind. You don't know what criteria they have. So I would just say, like, well, I never disclose salary information. Sorry. I hope that makes sense. Try and keep it pleasant. Don't like make it awkward, be aggressive or angry about it. And that's what I would do personally. Is it okay to leave a company for a couple of years and apply back to a different position? Will the company consider my application? Listen, it is possible, but here's what I would do, okay? If your original boss still works for that company, okay, I would get in touch with them. Okay, I would say, hello, yeah, it's Bill, it's whoever, it's been a long time and we haven't talked to each other, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I noticed that your company is hiring for this position. And, I was wondering, do you think it makes any sense for me to apply for that? And see what they say. And if they say, no, we don't former employees, we don't hire back, or whatever, or I don't think it's a good idea for you to apply for that. I don't think it would go very well. Something like that. Like, fair enough. That now that there's going to be a problem. If they say yes, they say sure. Usually they'll say sure, yeah, you can apply for it. In that case, you say okay, great. Well, listen, I'm going to apply for it, and I'm going to put you as my former boss as a reference. Is that okay? And then see what they say. If they were not going to give you a good reference, they may say, I prefer you don't give me, as a reference. And then, now you know where you stand, right? Because if your boss liked you and they're okay for having you back, or they would put in a good word for you so that you would get a different position, that's very powerful, okay? And I would mention that in my application. If you send your resume to a recruiter, I would say, hello, I'm applying for this job. I'm a former employee, and I contacted my previous boss, this person at your company, and they said that I should apply for it. They said they would be a reference for me in that. Okay? And that's how I would go about doing it. So hopefully that makes sense. Is it okay to leave a company? Yes. Great response. Thank you. And I will put thumb typing on my CV. Yes. Just say, I can type 1,000,000 miles an hour with my thumbs. Think what I could do with all my other fingers. I have so many other fingers, and I've never really known what to do with them. Let's see here. Pranay says, if a lower level recruiter accepted our job and sent us for further job interviews to HR, and the HR was not happy with the decision of the lower recruiter, does this matter to the company? Yeah, I guess it matters with the company if their HR department says that you shouldn't have got that far or something. I don't like dealing with large organizations like that. It's a really flawed way of getting a job. If you've heard any of my videos or my live streams, I kind of make no disguise of my feelings about that. There are so many better ways to get a job than going through recruiters and applying for these jobs that are publicly posted. It's a matter of pure chance. A lot of these people don't have a clue what they're doing. Their criteria for judging people is just completely out to lunch. So, if you get far in that process, great. If you don't, just remember there's way better ways of getting a job, including to anyone who's changing a career. If you're changing careers, you pretty much can't get a job through a recruiter, because the way recruiters work is their unit of measure is years of experience, right? Now, if you're changing a career, by definition, you won't have any experience in the career you're applying to. So, does that mean nobody can change a career? No, it just means that these people have to go through alternate channels, which is usually on the hidden job market. Right. Thanks a lot for answering. Yeah, no problem. No problem, James. When to ask for a raise? Well, see, that's all corporate stuff. Like, it's not based on anything real. It's just based on people's expectations. Theoretically, what you could do is, if you feel you're worth more, you could ask for a raise. If you can make a compelling argument why you should be paid more, you could ask. But just like a word of warning, like I said, employers by default, they don't want to give raises. They only tend to give raises if they, first of all, if you're important to them, if they feel that you're very valuable and they don't want to lose you. Okay. If they feel like that about you, then it's worth it. If they feel kind of indifferent to you, then, or you're one of 100 people in the same position and everyone does the same job, and, then, if you ask for a raise, it also sets a precedent. Then that means other people can ask for a raise if they grant you one. So that also is a factor. The only way you can really do it and have any weight behind it, like I said, is if you've got an offer from another company. Then, it's like, look, you don't disclose this. You just say, like, look, you're making 20. Another company is willing to offer you 30 if you work for them. You go to your boss and says, like, and you say, like, look, I'd like a raise. I'd like 35. Can you do that? Otherwise I might have to move on, or you could just not mention that. And then they'll say yes, or they'll say no. If they say no, you're like, okay, no problem, goodbye. And then you take the job for 30. So you're going from 20 to 30. If they give you 35, you're going from 20 to 35 and you stay there. So it's a win-win. But if it were me, I wouldn't just go to my boss out of the blue and just ask for a raise, because chances are they're not going to say yes. And number two, you're also kind of signaling that you're unhappy with the money you're making there. Okay? That's the signal you're giving. So that could be bad if the company then has to do layoffs and they have to lay off, say, 10% of their staff. Well, they might have formed the opinion that, you're kind of unhappy with your job here anyway, so I'm going to lay you off instead of somebody else. So I mean, that's the situation. Okay. So, like, if you're wanting to negotiate somebody, like I said, the key to negotiation, the key to power is having options. If you have no other options other than to stay there and work, you really can't negotiate. You can't force anyone's hand. If they say no, you just have no choice but to accept it if you want a job. So if you're in that situation, I would not recommend you go ask for a raise. If you feel you're worth more, go out and get an alternative job offer or something. And then it's a win-win. What do you think about startups? They hire extensively. Startups can be good, but it depends what stage of your career you're in. If you have very little experience and you're starting out, startups could be a great thing. The problem is that because they're small and they're new, they can be very risky. Okay. They may run out of money. They may have to pay you in shares and things like this because they might be short on cash. But if you're young and you need experience or you're interested in startups in itself, like, you want to make a career shift to having your own company or working in a small company, then they can be very good. They care about results. They don't care about process or procedures. So if you're coming from the corporate world to a startup, it's going to be a real culture shock. I think for the better, actually, but that's just me. But if you're young, yes, do it. Especially if you're like doing a job search right now, you're not actually working, join the startup. Okay, it should be an automatic yes. Random question. I'm a self-employed window cleaner. How do I approach a big company to offer my services? A window cleaner. Well, I mean, usually, do you know the contact person in the company that would be dealing with window cleaners? Would it be like the head of maintenance or operations or like a facility management person or, because if you know that person or who they are, that would be the person to talk to. You could contact them over LinkedIn, probably be the best way to do it for me. If you're more of an extroverted type person, you just want to meet people, I'd walk into the company. I'd walk through the front door. I'd talk to the receptionist. I'd say like, hey, would I be able to talk to the maintenance manager, please? Right? And if they say, sure, great. Chances are they're going to say, no, that person is not available right now. And you say, okay, not a problem. Listen, I'm going to leave my card, or if you have like a pamphlet or something, if I could ask, like, do they have an extension that I could later call or something like that? If they'll give you that, great. If not, You call back later, you go through the switchboard, you say, can you patch me through to the maintenance manager, please? And hopefully you know their name at this point. And then you either talk to them or you leave a message and you say, hey, this is, whatever your name is. And I'm just following up to see if you got my card and my pamphlet that I left for you at the front desk. And we offer this service. We'd be able to do a hell of a job for you guys. Let me know. Give me a call back. Let me know. And I might be able to save you some money. Something like that. I don't know. Whatever your pitch is. Okay. It's better to obviously to try and talk to them in person. But if you try 3 times and you still can't get them, just leave a message. And that's how I would do it. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up very soon, so I'll take these questions, and then I guess we'll have to just wait till the next live stream. Let's see here. Okay, Surf Honey says, I start my new job next week. I got the position by employee referral. The position was never posted outside. Good, that's the way to do it. How can I have as much confidence as you and build my self-esteem? Practice. Okay? Go and okay, look. Do a lot of job interviews, okay? The more you do, the better you get. Okay, that's like a perhaps slightly uncomfortable interaction with somebody else in a professional context. You do several of those, you'll start to see the pattern, you'll start to get good. Then, if you feel particularly adventurous, the next step is to do informational interviews. Okay, I talk about that in my course. I might have a couple of videos on it on my channel. But basically, you contact executives through LinkedIn, and you give like a little request. Say like, hey, you connect with them. And then you send them a message saying something along the lines of, I would love to get your expert opinion on your industry. I'm wondering if you could spare, 30 minutes of your time to just grab a coffee. Thank you very much. You choose the place, time, that kind of thing. Thank you very much. And believe it or not, a lot of executives will agree to that, because part of their job is to take these kind of queries from the public. They speak to the media, they speak to potential customers, potential vendors, okay? And you just go and you ask them a series of questions about their industry, like how's it going? Like what's the biggest challenge you see in the next year for your industry? How are things going? What about new technology coming in? What about this? And they'll love to talk about this because this is what they deal with all day. And you learn a lot and you get some self-confidence, more confidence talking to business professionals. And you also get to observe people that usually are masters of personal interaction and communication. And you get to see their A game, and you can pick up a lot of tips from that. So that helps too. But the more, practice makes perfect. The more you do, the better you get. And hopefully you have more of a natural affinity for speaking than I do. I speak in little phrases, as you can tell, which is not super impressive. But practice makes perfect, and you work on this, you start out, you're nervous and you're unsure of yourself. You wait a couple of years, you will be a force to be reckoned with. You'll be highly professional. You'll be at ease. You'll be able to handle job interviews, no problem, and other kinds of professional interviews. And that's one of the most in-demand skills for people that get promoted into management type positions, is to be able to interact professionally with people and have good communication skills. So yeah, just practice makes perfect. Start out small and then keep upping your game. And thank you for the flattering things you're saying. Okay, only a couple more and then I have to go. Where are we here? I have as much confidence. What are some signs of a company maybe having a layoff? I have seen 2 layoffs between different places, and they both seem to spend loads of money right before a big layoff/shutdown. Any reasoning behind this? Well, it depends. Some layoffs are cyclical, like seasonal. Some layoffs are not seasonal. They're just unplanned because the company's running into problems. And usually you won't see a lot of large expenditures right before they have to lay somebody off. That looks bad. And also, often the reason they're laying people off is because they're running out of money. Now, sometimes they do layoffs as a business decision. You know, like it's not that they're running out of money and they're almost bankrupt. They're doing fine. They've just decided that, you know, they want to be more efficient or something, and they're going to cut costs with their labor force. I mean, that's just not a good company to work for, period, if they're going to do stuff like that. And the thing is, once they do that once, then you're never really sure that they can't do that again at any moment. That's the problem. They've signaled that they're not to be trusted. They don't really care about their employees if they do that. So that's why it may not be a great place to really build a lasting career. Okay, that's where I'm going to have to leave it. David says something really nice here. I've been a subscriber. You're very clear. Thank you very much, David. You're awesome. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Check out my course if you want to go deeper. I'm going to be doing these at least for the next couple of weeks on Sundays and Wednesdays. I might move the time a little bit, but if you want to join me for the next one, I don't know what the topic's going to be. It'll be more of a sort of open forum Q&A. So join me there. Thanks so much. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to my channel. Join as a member to get extra stuff. And I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much and take care.